Marilyn Monroe's story began long before the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, before the red carpets, camera flashes, and adoring crowds. It began in Los Angeles on June 1st, 1926, when a fragile baby girl named Norma Jean Mortensen entered the world under difficult circumstances. Her birth certificate listed no father, and her mother, Gladys, battled severe mental health issues that would haunt both their lives. From the very start, Norma Jean's existence was shaped by instability, loneliness, and the constant search for safety. She never knew what it felt like to have a real home, and that longing for stability would follow her throughout her entire life. Her early years were defined by movement, constant unwanted change. When her mother's condition worsened, little Norma Jean was placed in foster care. Between 1935 and 1942, she lived in a string of foster homes and even an orphanage. Each time she began to form a connection, she was uprooted and moved elsewhere. These were not just brief stays. They were the formative years of a child learning that the people she loved could disappear overnight. Other children played freely, surrounded by parents and siblings. Norma Jean, on the other hand, learned early that survival meant adapting to loss, smiling when she was sad, and appearing fine when she wasn't. It was a lesson that would later become both her armor and her curse. The years in the orphanage brought structure but little affection. The staff ensured she was clothed and fed, but the warmth of a mother's love or a father's protection was absent. Her mother, Gladys, drifted in and out of mental institutions, and the uncertainty of whether she would ever return created a deep wound in Norma Jean's psyche. She grew up yearning for love but fearing it at the same time. With no father to guide her and no stable family to depend on, she became a ward of the state, an invisible child in a system that valued obedience more than emotional connection. Those experiences taught her to hide her pain behind politeness, to charm her way through discomfort, and to dream of something better, something beautiful. That dream, as fragile as it was, would later become her driving force. By the time Norma Jean turned 16, she was facing another crisis. Her foster arrangement was ending, and the state was preparing to send her back to the orphanage. Terrified of returning to that world of cold walls and strict schedules, she made a decision that would change the course of her life. In June 1942, she married James Dougherty, a 21-year-old neighbor. It wasn't a love story, it was a survival plan. Marriage at that time offered legal protection and stability. For Norma Jean, it meant she wouldn't have to return to the orphanage. Though she was still a teenager, she stepped into the role of a wife, hoping it would give her the sense of belonging she had always craved. But inside, she was still that lost little girl searching for affection in a world that rarely gave it freely. When World War II began, James joined the Merchant Marines and left for service overseas. Alone once again, Norma Jean stayed behind in California. To support herself, she took a job in a munitions factory in Van Nuys in 1944, helping with wartime production. Surrounded by machinery, noise, and exhaustion, she worked like countless other women who had stepped into men's roles during the war. And then, one ordinary day, fate intervened. A military photographer arrived to take morale-boosting pictures of women working for the war effort. When he noticed Norma Jean's striking features, he asked to take her photograph. That one snapshot, simple, spontaneous, and unplanned, would become the spark that ignited her transformation. The photographs led to modeling opportunities, and soon she was signed with a modeling agency. Norma Jean discovered something she had never experienced before: control. In front of the camera, she wasn't the unwanted foster child or the anxious housewife. She was radiant, captivating, and desired. Modeling gave her something priceless: validation. Each click of the camera affirmed her worth. Within months, she was appearing in magazines and calendars as a pin-up model, adored by the public. Her image was everywhere, and for the first time in her life, she began to feel powerful. The shy, uncertain girl who had spent her childhood being moved from one home to another was slowly transforming into a woman who could command attention with a glance. But success also demanded change. In 1946, Norma Jean's modeling success caught the attention of 20th Century Fox, and she signed her first studio contract. It was the beginning of her journey into Hollywood, but also the birth of her public identity. Studio executives believed her name needed to sound more glamorous, more American, more marketable. And so, Norma Jean Mortensen became Marilyn Monroe. The name Marilyn was inspired by Broadway actress Marilyn Miller, while Monroe was her mother's maiden name. In that moment, she was reborn, not just as an actress but as a symbol of beauty and reinvention. Yet, this new name also created a split within her. To the world, she was Marilyn Monroe, the confident, smiling star-to-be. But inside, she was still Norma Jean, the girl who feared abandonment and longed to be loved for who she really was. As she began taking small film roles between 1947 and 1950, Marilyn's transformation continued. Her first credited role came in Dangerous Years, 1947, where she played a minor character named Evie. It wasn't a major role, but it was enough to put her on Hollywood's radar. She worked hard, observed the great actors around her, and treated every small part as an opportunity to learn. Over the next few years, she appeared in minor roles, slowly earning experience and confidence. Critics began to take notice, especially after her performance in The Asphalt Jungle, 1950, where her brief but memorable role caught the public's attention. She was no longer just a pretty face. There was something magnetic about her presence on screen. By the dawn of the 1950s, Marilyn Monroe was ready to take her place in Hollywood. The orphan girl had reinvented herself into a symbol of beauty, charm, and promise. But beneath the surface of her blossoming career, the cracks of her fragile emotional world were already visible. She had mastered the art of transformation, of turning pain into allure, loneliness into charisma. Yet even as she stood at the edge of stardom, a quiet truth lingered in her heart. Norma Jean had not disappeared. She lived behind the mask of Marilyn Monroe, watching as the world fell in love with an image that wasn't entirely her own. And though fame was just beginning, the duality between the woman and the myth had already begun to take shape, setting the stage for a life that would dazzle, unravel, and ultimately haunt the world forever. As Marilyn Monroe's career began to rise, Hollywood quickly recognized that she had something unique, an allure that couldn't be manufactured. She wasn't just beautiful, she was magnetic. Her vulnerability, her laughter, the way she could look both innocent and sensual at the same time, it captivated everyone. Yet, what most didn't realize was that behind that dazzling smile was a woman fighting to prove that she was more than just a pretty face. The studios, obsessed with her physical appeal, wanted her to play the same type of roles. The dumb blonde, the seductive beauty who made men weak and women jealous. But Marilyn wanted more. She wanted to be respected as an actress, to be seen as someone with depth and talent. That conflict between who she was and what the world wanted her to be would define much of her career. Her early breakthrough came with The Asphalt Jungle 1950, followed by All About Eve that same year. Both films gave her small parts, but critics and audiences couldn't look away when she appeared on screen. There was a softness in her eyes and a glow to her presence that made even minor scenes unforgettable. Soon, 20th Century Fox began to realize her box office potential, and Marilyn's career gained real momentum. Over the next few years, she appeared in Clash by Night, 1952, Don't Bother to Knock, 1952, and Niagara, 1953, where her performance as a dangerous seductress firmly established her as Hollywood's new sex symbol. The industry had found its next golden star, and Marilyn Monroe became a household name. But fame came at a cost. The woman who had once dreamed of stability now found herself surrounded by flashing cameras, endless rumors, and a constant demand to perform. She was expected to always look perfect, to be Marilyn Monroe, the fantasy, even when she felt like Norma Jean inside. Studio executives controlled every aspect of her image, her hair color, her weight, her clothes, even her smile. They marketed her as the ultimate dream girl, but in doing so, they erased her complexity. Marilyn played along, knowing that her success depended on maintaining the illusion, yet deep down she longed to be taken seriously, to break free from the stereotype that confined her. Her biggest hits came one after another: Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, 1953, and How to Marry a Millionaire, 1953, turned her into an international icon. Audiences adored her playful charm, her comedic timing, and her unforgettable presence. Songs, like Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, cemented her status as the embodiment of glamour and desire. However, with each success, Marilyn grew more restless. She knew people were laughing at her characters, not understanding her craft. She wasn't just playing the dumb blonde. She was creating her, giving her depth, timing, and irony. But few recognized that. The world had fallen in love with the fantasy, not the woman. Behind closed doors, Marilyn's insecurities deepened. She suffered from stage fright, anxiety, and constant fear of failure. She took acting lessons with Lee Strasberg at the Actors Studio, determined to refine her skills and gain the artistic respect she craved. It was there she began to explore method acting, channeling her pain into performance. Strasberg saw something extraordinary in her, a raw emotional honesty that few actresses possessed. Marilyn wasn't pretending on screen. She was exposing her soul. Her talent was real, even if Hollywood wasn't ready to acknowledge it. By the mid-1950s, Marilyn had become one of the most famous women in the world. Men adored her, women admired her, and the media followed her every move. Yet, for all her fame, she often felt completely alone. She once said, "I'm not used to being happy. That gives me butterflies." The spotlight that made her shine also trapped her, blurring the line between who she really was and who the world wanted her to be. It was a paradox she could never escape. Her beauty gave her everything, but it also took away the very thing she had always longed for: to be loved, simply for being herself. Marilyn's personal life became as turbulent as her career was dazzling. In 1954, she married baseball legend Joe DiMaggio, a union that captured the world's attention. On the surface, they seemed like America's dream couple, the beautiful movie star and the celebrated athlete. But behind closed doors, their marriage was filled with tension. Joe admired Marilyn deeply but struggled with her fame and the attention she received from other men. His traditional views clashed with her growing independence and career ambitions. The infamous moment when Marilyn's white dress blew up over a subway grate during the filming of The 7-Year Itch became a symbol of her allure. But for DiMaggio, it was humiliation. Their arguments grew bitter, and just 9 months after their wedding, Marilyn filed for divorce, citing mental cruelty. Despite their separation, Joe never stopped caring for her. He remained a quiet presence in her life, sending her flowers and checking on her well-being. For Marilyn, the relationship left deep emotional scars. She had wanted love and protection but found control and jealousy instead. It reinforced her fear that men desired the image of Marilyn Monroe, not the real, fragile woman hidden behind the fame. ChatGPT said, after her divorce from Joe DiMaggio, Marilyn threw herself into her work, determined to reclaim control over her life and career. Hollywood still wanted her to play the same seductive roles, but she was growing restless. She knew she had more to offer than the smiling blonde on magazine covers. In 1955, she made a bold move that shocked the industry. She broke her contract with 20th Century Fox and moved to New York to study acting seriously. There, she joined the Actors Studio under the mentorship of Lee Strasberg, who became one of the most influential figures in her life. Strasberg encouraged her to dig deep into her emotions, to use her pain as creative fuel. For the first time, Marilyn felt understood not as a product, but as a person. In New York, she created her own production company, Marilyn Monroe Productions. a move that few women in Hollywood had dared to make. It was a statement of independence, a declaration that she would no longer be controlled by studio executives who only saw her as a commodity. Her ambition paid off. In 1956, she returned to the screen with Bus Stop, a performance that silenced many critics. Her portrayal of Cherie, a vulnerable yet determined singer, earned her genuine praise for the first time. Audiences saw not just glamour but raw emotion. That same year, she married playwright Arthur Miller, a man she admired for his intellect and depth. With him, she hoped to find the emotional connection she had always longed for. She converted to Judaism out of respect for his faith and envisioned a life of stability, creativity, and love. Yet even in this new chapter, Marilyn's insecurities lingered. Though she was gaining respect as an actress, she still battled feelings of inadequacy and the haunting fear that she was never truly enough, neither for Hollywood nor for love. Marilyn's marriage to Arthur Miller began with passion and promise. She admired his intelligence and sensitivity, believing that he saw beyond her fame to the woman within. For a while, she found comfort in their quiet life together, far from Hollywood's flashing cameras. They moved to a farmhouse in Roxbury, Connecticut, where she hoped to build a family and a sense of normalcy. But as time passed, cracks began to appear. Miller was a serious intellectual, and Marilyn often felt that he viewed her as a muse rather than a partner. She read his private notes one day and was devastated to discover he doubted her emotional stability and feared that she would embarrass him. It shattered her trust and deepened the insecurities she had tried so hard to overcome. During this period, Marilyn's emotional struggles worsened. The pressures of fame, her turbulent marriage, and repeated miscarriages left her mentally and physically drained. She turned increasingly to pills to sleep, to wake up, to calm her nerves. Despite her inner turmoil, she continued working, delivering one of her most iconic performances in Some Like It Hot, 1959. Her comedic brilliance lit up the screen, and she won a Golden Globe for her role, but behind the laughter was exhaustion and pain. Her marriage to Miller unraveled during the filming of The Misfits, 1961, a movie he had written for her. The film mirrored her own life, a story of loneliness and disillusionment. By the time filming ended, their relationship was over. Marilyn filed for divorce, feeling once again abandoned and misunderstood. Despite her immense fame and talent, she was trapped in a cycle of heartbreak and self-doubt. Each success brought applause, but each night ended in silence, a reminder that the love she sought always seemed just out of reach.